This was a little bit sorry. It's we're about ready to get started. Wanted to move towards your seat. That would be great. Maybe kids in preschool can listen. Okay, let's do our last presentation today so we can celebrate. So we're getting closer. All right. So next up we have Eric Virgil, and he's going to be speaking on Endeavor installation, basically. Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.
Hey everybody, I'm Eric, University of Rhode Island. I'm just going to talk a little bit about kind of the user experience of operating the FortiGate over the last 2 months, and the kind of the next steps that we're going to be taking, both as like at CWG and as ship operators. So a lot of it's been covered. We didn't really coordinate very well with our presentations, but right now Endeavor's running two FortiGate 61Fs, which are a little bit lighter duty than the ones that have been ordered for the fleet, but still they're fine for our use case. We just kind of YOLO'd and put them in, and they're running our entire network core and our firewall. So we're getting the full experience right now, and so far it's been pretty good. They're running as an HA pair. So you got the second one in hot standby, and then Rachel already showed you the two core switches, which are kind of in warm standby. The reason why Endeavor did this is, one, we had a good schedule to get it done, where we had the hardware in hand and a little bit of a break in our sailing schedule. Endeavor is also close to Rachel and Laura, who are kind of heading up the implementation of this project. And also it's good for Endeavor being a medium-sized ship. We have big ship problems and we have small ship problems where, we have the small ship problems where we have a couple of marine techs and that's it. We're our own island. And then we have big ship problems where we go international, we leave port for months at a time sometimes. So it's kind of good to test both of those worlds. And, being a 46, 47-year-old ship now, we don't really have any OT. Endeavor is very analog, so the risk was low. We decided to split it up into a two-phase process. So phase one was going to be the drop-in replacement for the PEP-Link, so just your core firewall and associated services. So we don't run a separate DNS or DHCP, so the FortiGate's doing it all. And then phase two, which just got done last week, is that we have everything routed through the hub now. And we've moved management of the device ashore to the FortiManager, which was kind of a surprise to me. I didn't realize we were doing it. So that was done last week. My concerns with this whole project were that we've been running PEP-Links just like all the ships. We run PEP-Links for our firewall, and they're kind of tried and true. They work. They were doing SD-WAN before it was cool, and they're designed for maritime. They're designed for trains, moving platforms. So I was concerned about replacing something that worked with something that wasn't going to work, and part of that was my experience with the Sophos, because I've had some colorful language to describe that device. It's just, after so many attempts, and especially on a ship like Endeavor, where you're sailing with one technician, it's a real headache when things don't go right, and you got 100 people coming to you, and you got a million other things going on. So, and the PEP VPN, I was talking to John about earlier. He's not a fan, but the PEP VPN just works super well. So for years now, we've had a VPN ashore, primarily just for VoIP. We weren't running our full internet traffic ashore that way, but super reliable. some of the nagging issues, Rachel touched on some of these, but URI employees, we use a Cisco VPN to get into, our PeopleSoft software, which is like our enterprise management system. And then the authentication through Duo. And gosh, that was just totally unreliable. You never knew what you were going to get with the Peplink, because the way that Peplink load balances, you don't really have much control over which plan you're going over. So you never knew if you were going to be able to do your time card that day. Also, the lack of, we had no solid fixed IP. So it's, I think the C-Link, we had fixed IPs, but then the KA band we didn't, and our 4G system we didn't. So there was no like really reliable way to remote into the ship, and I realize that could be solved with a VPN, but like I said earlier, we have small ship problems. We don't have the staff or the time to really put things in place and test them. We do know. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, and just getting the Dutch Google results, it's a pain when you got people coming all day long, like, why am I getting the weather for the Netherlands right now with tailored Google search results? So, like Lynn said, the phase one's been going well. The system works really well. It handles the load balancing better than the Peplinks. The Peplinks weren't seamless. I said it the other day. There were definitely seams in there when you're failing over from one WAN to another, or you didn't know which WAN you were going to get when you're logging into your bank. So, Endeavor did a cruise up to the Labrador 28-day project, and from all reports, not a single connectivity issue, and that's a combination of the adequate bandwidth and the antenna coverage, thanks to the efforts of HiSeasNet and this new firewall project, which is solid network engineering and just the homework that Rachel and Laura put in to making sure that it was going to be successful on Endeavor. But that really helped us out. So phase two. So now that all of our traffic is going to the mock-up hub, the actual hub is not in hand yet, but they got the hub mock-up. So that we go to see 5 days after RV Tech. I'm going to be on that cruise, so I'm ready to take punches if it doesn't work. But I think the hard work's been done, and hopefully we don't have any issues with that. And like Rachel said, if the hub doesn't work, it fails right over to local internet. So I'm not that worried about it. Then it's getting the log data uploading to OmniSock. And just to clear it up, you're no longer Research Sock, you're OmniSock.
I'll cover this more tomorrow, but
Okay.
It's actually always been OmniSock. It's
Okay.
just, Research Sock, you can think of it as a bundle of services.
All right.
Specific for NSF major systems.
Well, we'll get our log data flow in there, and then we'll know we'll be nice and secure. No more hackers getting in. And then trials for the shore-based 40 manager. So just to be clear about that, when you log in to the local firewall on your ship, you get a little message that says you're not supposed to be in here. You're supposed to do all your management through the thing ashore. Which is kind of a big step. We'll see how it goes. That one I'm not too sure about. Now, from what Rachel tells me, you can, in an emergency, like if you were to lose connection to your shore-based 40 manager, you can make local changes, but it's a big question mark on it. When does that get overridden by, so, and this is the sales pitch, is that we need volunteers to take on this project, people who are ready to, and by we, I mean like the royal we, all those logos on the bottom. We need people to adopt this project, and specifically coastal local intermediate vessels, because the larger vessels pretty much got it covered. They have the expertise to do these kinds of things. So to someone in Satnac, HiSeasNet, volunteer your ship, and it's a full service project. So basically, yes, all the heavy lifting is carried for you. You just might have to provide some network diagrams, host a couple of ship visits to figure it all out. But anyone want to volunteer right now?
Can NSF give like a beer sponsorship or something if you adopt us on your vessel?
Hands fighting.
Gordon.
So, still to do, things that we haven't really gotten to because we're still in like the purchasing gear part of this project is talking about long-term support. You know, so if we're going to start offering this as a fleet service, you know, you gotta support it. You gotta have someone to do the firmware updates and answer the phone when something goes wrong. So that's something that's still kind of being discussed. Something that, you know, this isn't really a goal of the project, but something that I would like to see as a ship operator is using the FortiGates have like a really sweet API that you can kind of read everything from there and make changes. So I would like to see some custom dashboards to help the sailing marine techs, you know, figure out problems without having to log into the firewall itself, and potentially also give sailing scientists and crew kind of a way to self-monitor themselves, which might be kind of a moot point as we start getting things like Starlink and we care less about, you know, how much bandwidth you're chewing up, but you certainly don't want to give crew and scientists login credentials to your firewall, you know, your network port. So, and then kind of start working on implementing a proper directory service. So I know just about every ship out there is still using, you know, local user accounts and things like that. And so our you know, our IMO regulations don't explicitly say that you should have some kind of directory service, but it's implied, right? Because they point to this BIMCO document, and how many people are like familiar with this and have read it besides the sad So it's a readable document. Right? It's like a practical guide of how to do cybersecurity on ships. So I highly recommend you just kind of browse through it a little bit. But you know, it's right in there that you should not be passing user accounts using generic usernames, things like that. And it's tough. Operating a research vessel is a challenge, you know, but I think that's why we're all here. We enjoy these challenges. But you know, just, you know, some of the issues are that we have permanent crew, you have employees of whatever institution you're at, and then you have visiting scientists who have their own institutions. Sometimes you get Navy and Coast Guard people with their CAT cards, and so yeah, I could talk about the challenges all day. How many of you are actually running like a proper directory service on your ship? Like to log into like everything, not just
Yeah, getting there. We actually clone our campus Active Directory. That took some doing.
So including visiting scientists, they log in with like a username password.
If they're from UCSD, they could do that, but longer term,
Yeah.
The dream is to have federated identity management so that anybody in the fleet could do that.
That's good. John shares the dream, right? Yeah, you remember John Haverlack was always big on federated identity management, but this is like kind of starting smaller and making sure, work out the kinks before we go federated. You know?
Eric, I would put a plug into that work that John did. OSU looked at Central IT came to us talking about this problem. They went and looked up John and the folks that did that work are kind of RDC.
But again, this is not part of the official, you know, FortiGate project. Some things that can happen, right? Because we were in a point of stagnation for so long because things were moving so rapidly that everyone's kind of afraid to jump because nobody knew what the next step was from the FortiGate. It seemed like every 6 months we were installing new modems and new WANs and everything, but things have stabilized, things are good. So it's time to like make some technical investments. So that's all I got. Questions? This is questions for yeah, general discussion.
I just had two add-ons. One, as you get Star Shield on your ship, if you look at the specs on your Peplink, it's actually your VPN tunnel will be your bottleneck in the best of conditions for Starlink. So we're starting to get into the world where the hardware we have on ships can't perform fast enough compared to the links we're starting to be able to provide. It's a pretty extreme edge case, so take it with a grain of salt, but it's getting there. Like if you get a powerful 5G modem, you'll have some tunneling bottlenecks with that link.
No, that's why you went with the 201Fs for the globals, right? Because
Those are using just standard boilerplate IPsec, which is the best performer for tunneling. But yeah, generally for 201Fs for everything but the coastal regional, where basically if you're like sub 20 people, it's hard to justify that much performance. But I think Endeavor, I can't remember, a ship like Q Sharp would be slotted for, I think Q Sharp would get a 201, anything smaller would get a 1.5. But yeah, PepVPN does do a lot of things well, but it is pretty rate limited if you start getting into real internet speeds compared to what we've been living with for ships. And then the other add-on, I didn't have a chance to update you before the talk, but I got confirmation our phase 1 firewalls are getting delivered on Friday.
okay, somebody volunteered to install it. So
Yeah.
they're not just sitting on a shelf.
Yeah. And then we talked about this internally, but to help add to Eric's sales pitch, get them while they're hot. We do not have funds to buy for the entire fleet. We've got funds to buy for the majority of the fleet. So if you are interested, it's first come, first serve.
And the hubs?
Hubs are part of the phase 1.
Oh, so those are coming Friday too? Yeah, just because nobody showed it, but there's a,
Oh, I'm sorry.
there's a picture of it.
Yes, that's right. We can get more funds if we need to, but if you want something soon, first come, first serve.
Yeah. So those are the big beefy 1001Fs that are going. And again, those are an HA pair, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. There's a lot of redundancy there.
We can have 3 of 4 routers fail and everything should stay working.
So maybe an advertisement for that is, did you really go 28 days without touching this? No.
What we had to do was, when you get that orange and black exchange page, reboot the FX, but as far as the FortiGate, for Bonnie, though, I didn't have to anyway. It was awesome.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so we have it set up without having people have to log in with the Captain Portal hotel style. So it was much less time of not having to help people with figuring out their password, or also there are allotments because it's balanced differently. So yeah, that it probably saved 2 hours a day some days for sure. Yeah.
And it wasn't just great weather the whole time.
No, yeah,
It's like a
we
real
did,
deal
yeah, it
cruise.
was cloudy. And I think probably that one time when I had to reboot the FX, which for some reason ours, it just hasn't been rebooted maybe in a month or so. It might have been bad weather, so that KU wasn't. The issue, and it wasn't really the FortiGate itself, that was FX. So, everyone should go.
2 hours a day in tech time is not insignificant.
Yeah.
Grace.
So realistically, how much time would you recommend set aside, like, not be sailing to be able to make this upgrade?
That's a Rachel Laura question. How much time would a ship need to do a proper installation?
And once that's all done, start writing scripts. To like load the objects in so that once all that basic stuff is in there, start the templates that Rachel has. So I think it's all without taking anything down. there. So that would be in time downtime. Sorry, to not gather. So Rachel's working for him. We learned more about the actual. Yeah. How long did it take you to reach this to install it?
Speak up. What? What was the question?
How long does it take Rachel to install the system once she gets on the ship if you have a template pulled up?
Rachel's got her hand up here.
Time of walking around and if you, I don't know, you can have smart switches and VLANs or some of that stuff has to be done. But, then once you have the idea of what has to be done, then I don't think it. I can't remember that thing.
I can give you some data. On Nautilus, it was a day. Basically just within one day, re-racking stuff, cleaning up cabling, and then so yeah, because we've done all that work ahead of time, you can allocate a day, you can do it. But a few days would be smart.
I can give you some more data. I'll give you the one for this photography with data. What she did, she came out and she was on the list hold with some fire. She must have was spoken to all that. So she just basically copied over the whole A6 router, all that settings like that.
Rachel, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so actually I couldn't understand any of what was just said. I think I heard a little bit of Julian and a little bit of Laura, but I think a couple of days installation window is reasonable. The thing to keep in mind is that there's really three parts of it. There's, we talked about in the architecture, so some of the things that we're really building on, like, on Endeavor. So we've got the actual FortiGate installation off the template. And like Julian was saying, that's realistically, it's like a day of configuration. But you've got the FortiGate installation itself. You've got the dependencies that the FortiGate is, that we need to build out the architecture. And then you've got the handover. So the, when we're talking about like the dependencies, that would be like those core switches. If you're a vessel like on Nautilus, like we already had VLANs in place. On Endeavor, we didn't. So, those core switches you saw in the picture, like, I would say took a couple days to map out the network, verify that the diagrams were accurate, get the VLAN, sort of the dependencies in place. And then it took, it was about a day to get, once the dependencies are in place, you've got a day to get the FortiGate slotted in. And keep in mind too, like, we're talking about like a day to, like rack it and stack it and verify connectivity, but that doesn't translate to a day of downtime. This is, the way we sequence the installation is we bring up all the WAN site first. So, you make sure all the business with the tunnels and all that stuff, once that's up and running, the part where you actually break, you have your actual cutover, where you might see some outages on the network, is going to be pretty short. But I think when we were switching things over on Endeavor, it took about 15 minutes or so. And keep in mind, like, we're going to do it bit by bit. So it's not like you have like, hours of downtime. We bring everything up, make sure that the internet side works properly. Test all of make sure like, okay, the public network will get internet access and everything still works properly. And then only at the very end of that do we cut over the LAN side. And then the handover is, it is important to carve out, I would say, at least a day or so. I mean, realistically, like, you're never going to have a full day of just handover time during a port stop. I think having a couple days is good because it's easier to kind of get blocks, almost like, oh, okay, here's, we want to spend a couple hours going over it, but you're probably not going to get a couple hours of uninterrupted tech time. I mean, that's my perspective is on the other end of that, being like one of the IT techs on this Nautilus cruise. I think that I've been giving people like 10-minute, bursts of attention. So I have know exactly how that goes. But yeah, so I think those are the three major components that take up time.
Yeah, so that was part of in the original version of it.
I was just gonna say, yeah, we're really busy people, and it was great. It was great to offload that, to somebody else to do this huge project. All right. Anything else? We breaking early? There's cookies in the bag.
Let me bring this because it's got a list of things. I think we might be. Unless anybody else has any questions or wants to raise their hand for a Fortinet right now. Okay, FortiGate.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Eric. And Laura, and Ken, and John, and Tom, and Mike. Well, thank you, everybody. That was our very first ever Cyber Monday at our VTech. So, again, you guys have blown me away with how many people showed up today, and I really appreciate it. I have a couple of reminders or announcements for the rest of the week. We have, if our in-person folks RSVP for sessions on Whova, then if we need to adjust which room a presentation is in, because if something's more popular than another, then we could do that. So if you RSVP'd for the sessions you want to attend specifically for breakouts, that would be helpful to make sure that we all fit maybe a little better than we did today. You may have gotten some reminders from Maria about the Privilege Walk survey. You don't necessarily have to understand what that is right now. Maria will explain it as we get here, but it's just a survey with some yes and no questions about your background. And it'll give us some interesting numbers to look at on Wednesday. And then lastly, thank you for checking in. I need you to stop by the desk every morning and say hello to Bridget and check in. We record who was here every day. So even if you just come in for 10 minutes, walk by Bridget and check your name off the list. Tomorrow, we're not using this room. We're using the Pacalana and Anthurium right there for our breakouts. And then the Grand Lanai, which is not Grand, I've been typing it wrong for months. The Garden Lanai room over there is where we're gonna be doing our plenary. So we'll also use that for breakouts. And then our lunches will be in the Hibiscus room. We got the biggest room back in the corner for lunch. If you brought a poster, a physical poster, and an easel, hopefully, because it is in our contract that we cannot tape anything to the walls, it'll go in the Hibiscus room tomorrow. And because we're moving rooms tonight, actually they said that don't leave anything you want secured in our meeting rooms overnight. So unless you really need that insurance money, don't leave anything behind you can't lose. Does anybody have any questions about how it went today, what's happening tomorrow? We did have some time reserved for checking in this evening, but you've all already checked in, so you don't care probably at this point, but we're just gonna do check-in in the morning. It went pretty smoothly here, and so don't show up, we're not gonna be here. We're all gonna be partying and sleeping. Or working, depending on who you are.
All three.
All three. Questions? Okay, well, I'm going to save most of my thanks for the rest of the meeting when we have all of our attendees. But today, the expansion of an additional day, which freed up like 4 hours of breakout space for the next 2 days. We couldn't have done this without Jim's support. We couldn't do anything about our VTech without Jim's support. I agree with Jim fully. Which is that this is the best and most important meeting of the year. And we're so glad you all made it. So big round of applause for Jim. And that said, you're out early. Go have fun. See you tomorrow. We'll have the desk by 8 a.m., but the meeting starts at 9.
Okay.